Good morning, everyone. I'm reading from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. This week the topic is, what does it mean to fail spiritually? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The first passage is the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25. Jesus tells the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 of them wise, 5 of them foolish. They await their bridegroom, the Christ consciousness. The wise virgins keep the oil in their lamps, symbolic of their devotion, and they keep their lamps lit through the night. The foolish virgins placed no oil in their lamps. These foolish ones are like the average devotee, going through the motions of outer ritual, but keeping no fire of love burning in their hearts. When the bridegroom's coming is announced, the foolish virgins realize their mistake and hasten out to purchase oil. During their absence, the Christ consciousness comes and embraces those who have been awaiting him with devotion. The foolish ones, by their lackluster devotion, are not accepted by him. Watch, therefore, Jesus told his listeners, for you know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of God cometh. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramhansa Yogananda describes the foolish virgin consciousness he encountered in the Mahamandal hermitage he stayed in as a young man in Benares. I was pleased, he wrote, that my new home possessed an attic where I managed to spend the dawn and morning hours. The ashram members, knowing little of meditation practices, thought I should employ my entire time in organizational duties. They gave me praise for my afternoon work in their office. Don't try to catch God so soon. This ridicule accompanied one of my early departures towards the attic. Later, during meditation, I felt lifted as though bodily to a sphere uncircumscribed. Thy Master cometh today. A divine womanly voice came from everywhere and nowhere. This supernal experience was pierced by a shout from a definite locale. A young priest named Habu was calling me from the downstairs kitchen. Mukunda, enough of meditation. You are needed for an errand. The Divine Mother's words were not spoken for the benefit of that priest, the foolish virgin, but for Mukunda, the wise virgin. For this was the day his guru, Sri Yukteswar, came to him. Grieve not, friends, if you feel that you have been foolish. No error is ever forever. Someday, if you keep your lamp lit now, your opportunity will come. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 6th chapter, Krishna promises every devotee, Arjuna, none who works for self-redemption will ever meet an evil destiny. Spiritual failure, though a deep disappointment, is always temporary. Eternal hellfire is but a projection of vindictiveness in the human mind. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. That last line about hellfire is just a projection of vindictiveness from the human mind reminded me of this story of Yogananda and I thought I would just share this with you. Yogananda was visiting the Pacific Northwest, and he stopped at a farm to buy some cherries, and he got into a discussion with the farmer. And the discussion turned to religion, and at a certain point, this farmer, who proved to be a religious fanatic, shouted, "We are all sinners. We're all going to burn in hell with fire and brimstone." Yogananda paused for a moment before replying. Then he asked, as if offhandedly, "You have a son, don't you?" And the farmer answered dolefully, "Yes, I have a son." "He gives you trouble, does he?" "Oh my God, what trouble." "He drinks, I think?" "Like a whale. You can't imagine the grief I go through on his account." Yogananda then announced confidently, "I have a cure for his problem." "Oh, sir, if you can help me with that, I'd be forever grateful to you." "Okay, well, here's what you do," Yogananda said. "The next time he comes home late at night drunk," and then he interrupted himself and said, "Do you have a large oven?" The man glared suspiciously at him. "Say, what do you have in mind anyway?" No, just wait," Yogananda spoke reassuringly. "I'm offering you a solution to your problem." Hesitantly, the man replied, "Well, yes, I have an oven. Has it a large door?" Suddenly, again apprehensive, the man replied, "Just a minute, where is all this heading?" Master spoke soothingly, "Just be calm. I'm going to solve everything for you." The other sat back, relaxing slightly. Master said, "Now then, here's what you do. The next time your son comes home drunk," well, first, does your oven get really good and hot? The man sat up again, horrified, and Yogananda spoke hurriedly on. "So you grab your son, tie him up with a strong rope, and shove him into the oven." Furiously indignant, the man shouted, "Blasphemer, evildoer, who ever heard of a father throwing his own son into an oven? Get out of my house this minute." Yogananda then said appeasingly, "Don't you understand what I've just said to you? You said God wants to throw us all into hell, but he is our true Father. You, a mere human being, were horrified at the thought of throwing your own son into an oven, despite all the trouble he's given you. How could you think the Divine Father, who has infinitely greater love than you do, and who created parental love, would burn his own children with hellfire and brimstone?" The old man's eyes filled with tears of repentance as he said, "I see now." He reflected for a moment. "Yes, you are right." He looked at Master with a grateful smile. "Thank you. You've cured me of a serious error. I understand now that the Heavenly Father is a God of love. He can't wish for our destruction." Isn't that a wonderful story? Do you have a large oven with a really big door? Master is so amazing. So that Bhagavad Gita reading says that all of us who strive for redemption will find God. There's more to that passage before in an earlier part of it. It says that anyone who works to rid themselves of sin, to become purified in body, mind, and soul, if we strive for that, and it says, and all who strive will attain. Once we have that desire for God, once we have that desire to know the truth to be free, to be in that bliss that we suspect is there. That desire will never go away. Earlier in that passage too, Krishna tells Arjuna, because Arjuna is saying, what if I do all this striving and then I just fail? I fall on my face. He doesn't quite say it that way, but that's what he's implying. What if I fall on my face and I just give up and go back to a worldly way of life and my old friends and all of that? What if that happens to me? And we're never safe, really, from that pull of delusion until we are in nirvikalpa samadhi. But Krishna reassures Arjuna. He says, even if you fail spectacularly, that seed of desire for God in your next life will be reawakened. You will be born in a noble family with prosperity, with kindness, with noble people. You may even get the rare opportunity of being born into a home of yogis. Blessed indeed is such a birth. Very rare. But you may have that privilege. I know some of our children here have been born into families of yogis. It's an amazing blessing. And Krishna reassures Arjuna again and again, don't worry, no effort is ever lost. Remember, our teachings say that every time we think an uplifting thought, we remember God, we offer an act of kindness to anyone, that raises the energy in the Kundalini. We get a little closer to God consciousness. And the inverse is true too. Every time we get angry, every time we get upset, every time we snap at someone, energy goes down in the Kundalini, a little farther away from God. As I've often said in these services, it's either an up arrow or a down arrow in every moment. Our energy is either going up towards God or going down into matter consciousness. So watch the thoughts, watch the heart, calm the heart. There's another story that Swami used to tell sometimes that I love, and it's about a group of disciples seated around their guru, probably ancient India. And the disciples are asking their master, how soon will I be liberated? How long before I find God? And the guru says to this one, oh, it'll be 10 lifetimes. And to this one, okay, I think it'll be probably 4 more lifetimes. And you, only 1 more lifetime. And they're finding out, all of them, how soon, how long will it take to find God? And then the guru's foremost disciple is seated off by himself, and he's not asking anything. He's just quietly meditating. And the other disciples know that this is a very great soul. And so they ask the guru, what about him? When will he find God? And the guru says, oh, I'm afraid it'll be 100 lifetimes for him. Everyone gasps. They can't believe it. Oh my God, what happens to him? Does he fall and just go back into the world? What? And they're just a buzz amongst themselves. They're all, whispering and chattering about this. And then when they look up, they realize this disciple has left the room. And they think, oh my God, he's so depressed and I don't know what's going to happen to him. Let's go out and find him and help him through this. So they all go running out and they see him dancing in ecstasy. What? And they come up to him and say, what is wrong with you? The Master just said you will have 100 lifetimes more of this suffering in this world. Why are you dancing? And he said, my brothers, rejoice with me. Didn't you hear what the Master said? He said, I will find God. It doesn't matter how long it takes. I will find him. And so the Guru came up to him in that moment, touched him at the spiritual eye, and he found God right then. So let us live not knowing when the bridegroom will come to us. Let us have so much devotion in our hearts that it doesn't matter if it takes 100 lifetimes or a moment. Let's kindle that devotion so that, like the wise virgins, we are aware and can receive that grace when it comes. I wonder how many moments of grace we've missed just because we didn't have the devotion to be receptive. So let's practice being receptive to the love of God and ask for nothing more than the opportunity to love him.
As a kid, I was a reasonably good student, but I had this really annoying twin sister who was a better student. And I should have phrased that a little more elegantly. She was a nice twin sister. She had the annoying habit of being more intelligent and doing better in school than I did, at least up to a certain point, and then in high school that sort of flipped around. But anyway, as a kid, I remember being vaguely aware that certain kids didn't graduate with the class in a given school year and were obliged to go back and repeat that year. And I just remember, along with the possibility of that my parents were not my parents and I was adopted and I didn't know it, along with that fear, the fear of going back and having to repeat a grade over again was just like the ultimate horror. And I will say that it motivated me somewhat. I cannot say that I needed that much motivation, or frankly that I needed that much help, because I was a reasonably good student. So I mean, the potential of having to do it was not high. But nevertheless, the possibility was there, and it was like this, ooh, what a horrible thing, because then every kid knows, well, see, he was in third grade, but now he's back here with us, and he has to do it all over again. And it was like, ay, 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 ay. And in a way, Swamiji is sort of presenting that reality that, there is such a thing as spiritual failure, where you didn't keep the lamp lit and the bridegroom came and you didn't get in the door and it didn't happen, and you get stuck waiting for the next boat to come along. And what he's saying, in a sense, he's kind of indicating something that we all should perhaps know from reading Autobiography of a Yogi, Sri Yukteswar's words. Those who are too good for this world are adorning some other. And which is one way of saying that, guys, we wouldn't be here if we hadn't failed on some level. I mean, if we didn't have something to do. I mean, yes, there are a few avatars around who can, and I don't mean the movie, I mean the actual word, who come in freedom and who come to help. But I mean, that's vanishingly rare in this world, and everyone else has pretty much got something to work on. However, in the grand scheme of things, and those of you who are parents of kids, I think will have learned this by your own understanding, fear is not the best motivator. It is, yes, it is a motivator, and maybe fear can keep your kid from running out into the street if you have, driven that lesson home with a certain vigor. But on a higher level, we need something deeper to motivate us, and that's what Nirmala was saying. We need that devotion. We need to awaken that devotion. Sri Yukteswar, in a different writing, suggests that we cannot take a single step on the spiritual journey without awakening the heart's natural love. That is the requisite for taking the first step and subsequent steps after that first step. So it's well if we focus on that, and I'll just go back to my twin sister briefly to be a little more fair to her. She had a certain degree of devotion, and it was partly habit, but it was partly just, this is what ought to be done, which is to say that Friday evening when the homework assignment, we all got the same homework. It's just that Friday evening she was doing hers, whereas Sunday night or Monday morning early I was doing mine. And lugging along the angst, during the weekend that, I do have that stupid paper to write that I haven't written yet. And it's there and it's sort of lurking. And okay, and then come Monday morning, I had enough on the ball that I could wake up early on a schedule and hammer the thing out. But it's just nicer to sort of get it done. Just get it done. And it's like that for all of us. But it takes that devotional effort and energy prior to, when it's not being demanded, it's not being forced. Nobody's got your arm twisted behind your back. Do it or not, do it or else. That's not a good motivator. That doesn't get us up first thing in the morning. I remember when, it's a sort of an odd way of thinking of devotion, but I remember when devotion ignited on a certain level for me. And it was in high school, and I was running. I was running for the track team initially, and then I was running for the cross-country team. And I just got this fire of devotion or desire to do well. And I thought, we practice every day after school. Well, let me practice before school. And so I would go out. I just did 2 a day. 2 a day is kind of what, that's a term in football. Training camp is often 2 a day. It means you work out in the morning and you work out in the afternoon. And I would get in Chicago, I can tell you that at 6 in the morning, it is dark and it is cold and there's often snow and ice on the ground, and I didn't care 2 hoots. I bundled up and got my stuff on and went off for a run. And I loved it. It was not a torture. It was not like somebody was twisting my arm and saying, you have to do this or else. It was just, I wanted to explore the possibility that I could be as good as I was, as good as I could be. And I was a decent runner. Anyway, all of that in a sense is irrelevant. But the devotional part of it and the way that it ignites, that's something we all have to explore and we all have to find for ourselves. No one can give you devotion if you don't have it, and no one can take it away from you if you do. I remember a different phrasing of that same principle once. Someone said, if you want responsibility, no one can keep it from you. And if you don't want responsibility, no one can force it on you because you'll just shed it like water off a duck's back. And it's a certain willingness, it's a certain openness. But we can take great comfort from the fact that we will, all of us, as Nirmala was saying in that beautiful story, we will all of us find God. The Guru will say, you will find God. Now, the when part of it is, of course, up for grabs. And I love that that disciple was willing to go dance in ecstasy because, hey, he said I would find God. Who cares about 100 lifetimes? What's 100 lifetimes? There's a line in this affirmation that is in the explanation of it that is worth meditating on. It's quite fascinating. Swamiji says, it is our identity with change that creates the illusion of passing time. Wow, that's pretty profound stuff. Because passing time is an illusion. And if we're identified with, well, this year my age is X, and last year it was 1 minus 1, and 10 years ago, et cetera. If we are busy watching change, and it's very easy to do that. I mean, we changed the clock in November, the days are shorter. I mean, it's like we notice change all over the place. Friend gets sick and, comes to see us and is like, God, you look terrible. I mean, we notice change. We notice a change in someone's tone of voice. What did you say? You did that little shift, the little edge there. We're real on it. But that awareness of change makes us think that time is a reality. One of the profound aspects of meditation, when we dive into deep meditation, there is no time. I remember on a pilgrimage to India, a pilgrimage in India. We were living there at the time. But the one little short pilgrimage that I took for a few days included a meditation in a cave near Rishikesh, where a saint had lived for most of his life and meditated very profoundly. And going into this cave, I mean, apart from the fact that you can't even think of a cell phone signal inside of this place. I mean, it's just like there is nothing going to penetrate that cave. We went in and meditated for, 45 minutes, an hour, maybe an hour and a half even. What was fascinating is that coming out of that cave, I could not have said if that meditation was a half hour or 3 hours. It was not, time disappeared. There was no time. And that's when a saint, when a deep meditator goes in, when you go into deep meditation, there is no time. It just vanishes. And you come out of it and it's like, it reminds me of these sadhus, these sages who went into deep meditation and were woken up, were brought out of their deep meditation forcibly. And their question was, what yuga is it? We've often, you wake up from a nap, a really profound nap. What yuga is it anyway? Where are we? What happened? How did we get here? What's happening here? But that changelessness is our destiny. And I love this affirmation, immortality being matched up with the reading, because we are immortal. guys, we can't escape it. There's no help for it. We are immortal. And we can bumble along and blunder along for as long as we want. It's our choice. How do you want to live like in trouble, or do you want to live in the divine light? It's up to us. There was a woman at Ananda many years ago who got HIV and then AIDS, and in the initial stages, this was very frightening to everybody. It was very unknown in the late 80s, early 90s. And I just remember this one satsang she gave to the whole community, stood up in front of hundreds of people and talked about the fact that, I don't know how long my life will be. This is going to change my life pretty dramatically. But she was basically saying, my life continues, whether in this body or not. And it was just, there was just something that shifted in my consciousness. It was like, who cares how long the body lasts? We get very fixated on being on this side of the veil, and we can't quite see through the veil. Well, there's a reason we can't see through the veil, because we're supposed to focus on what's here right now. That's the job, and that's the lesson. Okay, fine. But we can't escape immortality anyway. We're going to be immortal. It's just a question of how many times we have to repeat our way through the school. But the cool thing is, if there is an advantage to this, have you ever filled out, those of us who ever have to fill out a long form by hand, where you write in your name, your birthday, your social security name, blah, 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 all the way down. And part way through, maybe most of the way through this thing, you're going along, you're just fine, you're very careful, you're very methodical, getting everything in its exact little spot. All the letters fit into the little boxes. And somebody comes and asks you a question, and you start writing down their name where your name is supposed to go, because you're talking to, it's like, yeah. And then you have to put that one in the shredder and a new one and start all over again and write the whole blasted thing out. Well, now you know the answers. Now you're a little ahead of the curve, because you've already looked up the policy number or the phone number or the whatever, all the stuff that you didn't had to hunt for. It's all there. You already have it to hand. You go through it a lot faster the second time, or the whatever. Anyway, you can tell that I've done this once or twice before in my life, as I suppose have we all on one level or another. But let us take that deep devotee's attitude to heart, the one Nirmala told in the story. He told me I will find God. And let's dance in devotional ecstasy of joy, because it's true. And the mechanics of it, the details of it, who cares? However long it takes is however long it takes. Time is irrelevant. If you ever get on a 16-hour flight to India, you may think, gosh, time is not irrelevant. This is a long time. And yet, when you get on the plane and you look around and you think, well, all the rest of these people are going to do it somehow. I guess I can do it somehow too. Even if my rear end hurts and I'm crammed in a seat and the other seat is 6 inches from my face or whatever, it's like somehow we're all going to get through this thing. Let us know the truth that we are already with God, and all the rest is just the fully realizing of that deep truth.